Regina. I'm 25 years old, and the last thing I imagined that morning was that I'd be lying in the middle of a dark forest, not knowing if I'd ever see my friends again. When we were briefed on the mission, we knew it would be difficult, but nothing, absolutely nothing prepared us for what we found down there. The order was clear. Jump and gather the team on the island. But what they didn't tell us was what awaited us in that jungle. Or rather, who was waiting for us. When the helicopter turned to position us for the jump, the world seemed to stop for a second. I looked at my companions' faces. Tension was etched in every line of their expressions, but no one spoke. We knew this was much more than a simple mission. It was a top secret mission, where failure was not an option. 3, 2, 1. The instructor shouted, and with a leap, I found myself leaping into the void. The sound of the wind against my ears almost made me lose focus. I descended quickly, so quickly that the earth seemed to swallow me. But then the impact of my boot hitting the ground was so abrupt that I felt momentarily disoriented. The ground was wet and slippery. I was forced to regain my bearings quickly. Regina, where is everyone? The radio faltered for a few seconds, but soon I heard the voice of Juan, my second in command, echoing. I need your location now. I'm outside the rendezvous point, but I'm on my feet. I need to find you, I replied, trying to control my breathing and the adrenaline rushing through me. Now on the ground, I looked around. The scenery was breathtaking. A dense forest filled with giant trees and thick vegetation, but something was wrong. Something beyond that. The feeling that we weren't alone was palpable. When we began training for this mission, we were told that the island had been sealed off decades ago after failed military experiments. But they never told us about the experiments. They didn't tell us about the creatures that might be on the loose, mutated in indescribable ways. The first time I heard a strange noise, it sounded like a strong breeze, but it wasn't wind. Something was moving, something big. I moved away from the rendezvous point, trying to follow the radio signals. The others were miles away, and I couldn't waste time. Not after what I'd heard in the last transmission. Something was chasing Juan. The fear in his voice was enough to spur me on faster. The forest seemed to close in around me. The shadows of the trees seemed to move as if they had a life of their own, and the sound of heavy footsteps echoed somewhere ahead. Tension consumed me. Every snap of a twig was a reminder that I was no longer in control. I knew I was no longer facing a conventional military mission. Not here. And then I saw it. The first of them. A massive reptile with shiny scales and small but piercing eyes. It wasn't an ordinary dinosaur. It couldn't be. The creature was the size of a military vehicle, and its teeth were like sharp blades. I froze for a second. What is that? My heart raced, and adrenaline spurred me into action. I tried to back away, but the ground was thick with roots and mud. The creature approached quickly, and then I heard the sounds of others coming from the surrounding vegetation. I was surrounded. But the moment my hand tightened on the weapon, something inside me ignited. I could think of nothing but survival. Juan, where are you? I screamed, keeping my eyes on the creature in front of me. He didn't answer, and the feeling of loneliness grew even more intense. I was beginning to doubt my own sanity. Suddenly, the creature roared. The sound was deafening, and for a moment I thought my ears would burst. It was as if the entire island had stopped to hear that primal scream. And yet the sound was something much deeper, something that spoke directly to the fear that lived within me. Then my mind remembered the captain's words before we jumped. No matter what happens, the most important thing is that the mission is accomplished. Survival is the only option. I didn't know where the other team members were. I didn't know if they were still alive. But something inside me, perhaps the only thing I had left, said, "Go ahead, Regina. You have to go." The sound of the creatures approaching grew louder. I knew time was against me, but there was no choice. My only goal now was to survive and find my companions before it was too late. Heart pounding, I ran through the forest, the sounds of dinosaurs echoing towards me. Every step felt like a risk, but one thing was clear. I wouldn't stop until I accomplished my mission, until I found them all. The mission wasn't over. It had only just begun.